The queen who slept with her stepsons. There are many reasons why a king or queen might not want to have children. Maybe they already have enough kids. Maybe their relationship with their spouse is purely platonic, or maybe, just maybe, they don't want to risk giving birth to an illegitimate heir. You know, just in case. But when the royal parents decide they don't want to have children, it usually falls to other members of the royal court to carry on the bloodline. And sometimes those other members are willing and able participants. So put your tiaras on, grab your goblet, and join me as we explore the salacious stories of royals who slept with their stepsons. First, we have to look at the queen who slept with her stepsons, Fredegund of Neustria. Born in 548 AD, Fredegund was the daughter of a king and the niece of the king. That made her the perfect candidate to marry the King Theudebert I of the Burgundian kingdom of Neo-Austria. Unfortunately for her future happiness, she was only 12 years old when she married the 38-year-old king. But the bride was clearly meant to be the one, because after she gave birth to his first child, a girl named Gundelberga, she went on to bear him 6 more children. And then, after Theodobert's death in 596, she became queen consort of the Austrasian king Theuderic III, who was, you guessed it, her stepson. Talk about being a true definition of the term Stepford wife. Now, despite being a literal child bride, Fredegund wasn't all that unhappy in her marriage to Theodoric. He was only 13 when they wed, and he proved himself to be quite the Lothario over the years, fathering 8 children with Fredegund, before finally kicking the bucket in 613 when he passed away. His will stipulated that his widow would have to share power with his son under the regency of his mother, Ermentrude, as the young king was only 6 years old at the time. Unfortunately, Ermentrude was a jealous woman, and she soon came to resent the influence her daughter-in-law had over her son, even though Fredegund probably didn't mean any harm by it. She began spreading rumors around court that Fredegund was poisoning the king and the queen wasted no time in slapping her back with some slander of her own, saying that the real poisoner was Ermentrude. Fredegund was even said to have bribed court officials to accuse Ermentrude of treason and murder. After hearing these accusations, the nobles of Austrasia rose up against Ermentrude, killing her and installing Fredegund as regent. After successfully having her rival poisoned, Fredegund went on to outlive 3 of her stepsons, including the young king whose father she had also killed. In fact, she lived long enough to see 2 of her grandsons become king and queen of Neo-Austria. Now, that's what I call ambition. But while Fredegund's story may be shocking, there's nothing compared to the scandal surrounding this next pair of adulterers, Henry VIII and Catherine Parr. Henry VIII needs no introduction. The infamous Tudor monarch married 6 times, famously had 2 of his wives executed and sired children with at least 2 of them. His last wife, Catherine Parr, was no exception. The couple wed in 1543, but it was clear that Henry was more interested in his new stepson than his actual wife. According to historian Eric Ives, the king once surprised Catherine by entering her chambers in the middle of the night for a bit of fun. Although she gave birth to a stillborn son in 1547, it was clear that the king wanted another go at producing a male heir with Catherine, and sadly, she was willing to play ball. In fact, according to legend, Catherine actually suggested the king take one of her ladies-in-waiting, the young and beautiful Lady Rochford, as his mistress, so that Henry could have the chance to produce a legitimate son. However, this plan backfired when Lady Rochford became pregnant and gave birth to a daughter, causing the humiliated king to banish both her and Catherine from court. Despite the failed tryst, Henry continued to chase women, finding his next love interest in the belly dancer Anne of Cleves. After seeing her dance at a nobleman's home, the king brought her to court, married her, and took her on a tour of his palaces. This was clearly a huge shock to his last wife, who was left behind in Hampton Court. Historian Antonia Fraser describes Catherine's reaction to the news of her husband's new marriage, saying that she was overwhelmed with surprise and dismay. She couldn't understand how Henry could abandon her, a loyal and loving wife, for a woman he had only met once. But if Catherine thought that her husband's libido would wane after getting hitched to Anne, she was sorely mistaken. Henry was quick to find a fourth wife after his marriage to Anne fell apart, and he set his sights on Catherine Howard, a young woman who had once been one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting. It seems like Catherine knew exactly what she was getting into, though, as she basically repeated the same mistakes her predecessor had made. She took up a secret lover, Sir Thomas Culpeper, and bore his child while she was married to the king. Of course, when Henry found out, he threw Catherine in the Tower of London, where she spent 9 months awaiting execution. She eventually earned her freedom, but only after agreeing to a humiliating public penance. And that humiliating public penance happened to be during her wedding to the man she had been unfaithful with, Sir Thomas. While Catherine's story may have ended happily ever after, the same cannot be said about this next royal adulterer's wife, Henry's sister, Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary, was known for her violent temper, but nothing could compare to her rage when she discovered her husband, Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, was having an affair with her lady-in-waiting, Elizabeth Carey. Once she learned of the betrayal, Mary threatened to throw the couple in the Tower of London. Then she kicked them out of her court and out of her life, not one to let a little thing like marital infidelity get in the way of her having fun. Mary went ahead and divorced Charles, making him the first person to ever be divorced in England since Henry VIII. Just goes to show it's not always the cheater who gets punished. And finally, we have to talk about Mary, Queen of Scots, and her hot and heavy relationship with her son's tutor, David Rizzio. When Mary returned to Scotland in 1561, after spending her honeymoon in France, she asked her friend, Italian musician and composer David Rizzio, to serve as her son's tutor. Mary's husband, Lord Darnley, quickly grew jealous of the close relationship between Mary and Rizzio. According to author John Guy, Darnley felt that Rizzio was taking advantage of his wife and tried to warn him off. But when Rizzio failed to heed his warnings, Darnley took matters into his own hands. On March 9, 1566, Darnley burst into the Queen's bedroom along with 4 of his accomplices and brutally murdered Rizzio. The following year, Darnley was killed in an explosion at his house in Edinburgh. Many believe that Mary was behind her husband's murder, but she was never charged and always protested her innocence. Mary was later forced to abdicate in favor of her son, James, and she spent the last 19 years of her life imprisoned until her execution in 1587. Well, that's all for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.